All right. Hello, everyone. Hopefully you can all hear me and you can see the slides on the screen. Chat me if you don't. Welcome to the Small Business Contracting Assistance Programs Breakout Session. I'm Matt Mastronardo. I work on GSA Region 3's Business Development Team, and I'll be moderating the session today. I do just want to go over some housekeeping items before we begin. Please remain on mute with the camera off during the presentation section. We'll then have time for Q&A after the presentation. You can type in questions into the chat during the presentation. So unlike using Q&A, we don't have that, just use the chat. But we'll also open up the floor for Q&As after the presentation. So please raise your hand using that raise hand or the reactions feature at on your Zoom screen, and I'll then call on you. You can then unmute, camera on if you like, and ask your question. The session is 30 minutes. It ends at 3:55 Eastern. When we close, I'll provide instructions for moving to your choice of the 2 second breakout sessions. All right, so with those housekeeping items out of the way, I'd like to introduce you to our speaker today, Soretta Dyson-Beesing. Soretta has been with GSA for 11 years and currently serves as a supervisory small business specialist in the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, or OSDBU. Prior to joining OSDBU, Soretta served as a serves as a special assistant to the GSA administrator and worked on implementing agency initiatives. She started her career with GSA in the regional office in New York as a lead marketing specialist, which consisted of expanding federal spend for GSA in New York, New Jersey, and Puerto Rico. Prior to joining GSA, Soretta worked for the United States Department of Agriculture's Foreign Agricultural Service for 10 years to expand U.S. agricultural exports overseas. Soretta attended the University of Maryland College Park, where she received her bachelor's in political science and her master's in project management. Soretta also has an MBA, also received from the University of Maryland. We also have John Breen joining our session today during our Q&A section. John is the branch chief of the projects branch in the Integrated Workplace Acquisition Center, or IWAC, here in GSA Region 3, and he presented earlier today. So thank you both, and Soretta, the virtual podium is all yours.
Hey, Matt, we may have lost Soretta.
Yep, looks like that is the case. Well, we'll give her a minute to come back in.
Sure.
Thanks for your patience, everybody. Here we go.
Apologies, my computer got frozen, so I do apologize to everyone. Good afternoon, and I'm so happy to be here from our Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. And if we could go to the next slide. So GSA's Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization, just want to give you a background about who we are and what we do. I know we have a lot of small businesses in the audience. The Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization within GSA is your small business advocate. We conduct training events to help small businesses successfully navigate the federal procurement marketplace. We provide live webinars. We have live training conferences and events, all with the goal of helping you to achieve success. So within GSA, we are the small business advocate. And not only do we do outreach, we also interface with the acquisition workforce under particular requirements to ensure small businesses are considered at the prime and subcontracting level. So if you are a small business and you are in need of help with navigating this journey on federal procurement, or you need assistance with understanding sources sought notices, understanding how to access the cadre of resources that are available to you free, in fact, feel free to reach out to OSDBU. Next slide, please. So OSDBU was established. There's an Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization in every federal agency across government. And we're all charged with the same mission, which is advocating for small businesses. So we ensure that small businesses are considered, again, at the prime and subcontracting level. And so if we can go to the next slide. So we advocate for small disadvantaged businesses, women-owned small businesses, service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses, and those businesses located in hub zones. So essentially, you know, those statutory categories that you see on the screen, right? So those 4 categories, those are the goals that we track and we're beholden to. And so that is who we all work to support at the socioeconomic small business level, in addition to general small businesses. And we'll cover a little bit more of that as we go through the slides. So next slide, please. So wanted to talk about a little bit about small business set-asides, because during the presentation, I noted that we have small business specialists located, you know, across the country that review requirements to ensure small businesses are considered. So I want to do a deeper dive into that before I go into the small business set-asides, because literally that's what we're trying to do. And so through our small business specialists, we review strategies within GSA that are over the simplified acquisition threshold of $250,000. We also conduct reviews for requirements that will be sourced through GSA's vehicles, whether that be schedules or GWACs. And if they're not set aside for a socioeconomic small business, right? So we talked about that in the previous slide, the small disadvantaged business, the women-owned small businesses, the service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses, and those located in hub zones, right? So if it's not set aside for one of those socioeconomic categories, then we are going to review that requirement as well if it exceeds $6 million to see if we can. So when you go into the small business set aside, that's what we're trying to do. That's what helps us to do our work and create opportunities for you. And so small business set asides, that's either the entire requirement, or procurement is set aside for just small businesses to compete, or part of the procurement is set aside for all of the small businesses to compete. And if we go to the next slide, the road to getting to a small business set aside is actually through the market research, right? So I told you we review procurements that are above $250,000 or more. And then if it's against the schedule and it's not set aside for a socioeconomic small business, if it exceeds $6 million, we're reviewing those. And so one thing that's really important is that it makes it easy for us to see things that are set aside if small businesses are responding to sources sought notices or requests for information. So typically, when a CO is putting together a requirement, they start off with the market research. So we want to see what small businesses are available. And so those are issued out. And typically for our GSA contractors, it goes out through our e-buy system if it's a GSA buy. And so with that RFI or sources sought notice, if it comes back that 2 or more small businesses can complete that work, then that requirement is set aside for small businesses, which means that only small businesses can compete. So it's a level playing field. So anything that's over $250,000 or more, we like to have it set aside, and it will be set aside if the CO receives 2 responses from small businesses that are capable of performing that particular requirement. Consideration is also for sole source set-asides under the socioeconomic categories that we talked about, to include 8A, hub zone, service-disabled, veteran-owned small businesses, or women-owned small businesses. And one important thing to note is that there is no order of precedence among the socioeconomic programs. They're all treated equitably. And so now I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Michelle Chandler, who is on the phone with me, to cover the next slide, in which she'll talk about how the rule of 2 is handled within the space of the federal supply schedule. because I know we have a lot of scheduled contractors on the line. So Michelle, I'll hand it over to you.
Perfect. So can we go to the next slide? Okay, so my name is Michelle Chandler. I represent the Mass IT Schedules program side. So the federal supply schedule and the rule of two, the set-asides at the order level, although the preference program for part 19 are not mandatory in this subpart, order and activity contracting officers may at their discretion set aside orders of BPAs for any of the small business concerns in FAR Part 19. What that looks like is the schedules program, we fall and adhere to FAR 8.4. However, when it comes to set aside, there are opportunities for us to be creative legally to work with small businesses to come up to some type of total solution. Next slide, please. The non-manufacturing route, Sharita, you want to handle that, or would you like for me to?
You can handle that if you'd like to.
Okay, so for the non-manufacturing route, we don't see this a lot, but it is out there. So I'm just going to briefly touch on it. So if you have questions, you can chat those questions however you were instructed to do so. But the non-manufacturing route is recipients of small businesses set aside contracts for manufacturing goods, products, and products of domestic small manufacturer processes on our small business set aside. What does that look like? So for the most part, when it comes to the schedules, the mass schedule side, that rule, we rarely see that. However, on the furniture side, it's kind of a little separate because you don't have small businesses that can support the delivery of furniture. A lot of the in that space, the furniture space, a lot of the businesses that provide the small furniture is from large businesses. So there is some leniency there and to be in compliant with the law. So for non-manufacturer, that's like a dealer reseller. You're not the manufacturer of the product or service that you are delivering, but you are considered a dealer reseller or a reseller. So that's, if you see non-manufacturer, dealer, reseller, that's synonymous. That's all the same. Next slide.
Thank you, Michelle.
Okay, I'm gonna turn it back over to Sharita.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. And so if thank you for covering the non-manufacturing rule, and I'm sure we'll get into more of that in the Q&A. We have some great experts on the phone because with furniture, it tends to come up quite a bit, and that is our audience today, so we'll address that. So we're going to transition over into what's happening in the federal family as it relates to advancing equity throughout the federal government. And so last year, to explain how we're advancing equity and supporting the administration's priorities, last year, the president issued Executive Order 13985, which is entitled Advancing Racial Equity and Support for Underserved Communities. So essentially, this EO has directed agencies to enhance access to federal contracting opportunities for underserved communities. So we need to figure out, identify barriers that small businesses face with accessing federal procurement opportunities, and then bridge those gaps to reduce the barriers to support your success. And following the Executive Order 13985 in December of 2021, the Office of Management and Budget issued Memorandum M-22-03. And that is also advancing equity in federal procurement. And so what this does is it implements increasing spending across the federal government with small disadvantaged businesses by 15% by the year of 2025. Additionally, it mandates that we increase baseline spending to women-owned small businesses, service-disabled veteran-owned small businesses, and hub-zone contractors. So it wants us to encompass all of those socioeconomic small business categories and really create a level playing field, reduce the barrier to entry, and address any other barriers that you may face with accessing contracting opportunities. And so to respond to these two directives, GSA issued our Equity Action Plan, and that was submitted in January. And in our Equity Action Plan, GSA committed to 5 actions to create equity in procurement. And so my office, we are in charge of managing 3 of those actions with respect to helping small businesses find opportunities. And one of those 5 actions that I'd like to touch on today, which is pertinent to everyone here, if we can go to the next slide, is to help. Oh, did we go to the next slide? Okay, very good. So one of those key initiatives that we have with advancing equity is we have to meet a small disadvantaged contracting goal of 21% by fiscal year 2022. So essentially, let me go through the 5 actions, then I'll go through the one of why we're here today. So every federal agency across government has renegotiated their small disadvantaged business goal. GSA's goal has traditionally been 5%. However, it has been increased to 21% for fiscal year 2022 to meet the ask in Executive Order 13985 and it OMB Memo M-22-03. And so within our equity plan, there's 5 actions that we've committed to, 3 that my office is responsible for. And so as you'll see on this slide, one is establishing a post-award engagement strategy, robust post-award engagement strategy. And I'll talk about that in further detail in the next plan, but also establish a supplier diversity plan and expand the forecast of contracting opportunities tool. So diversifying our supplier base, but also expanding the agencies that are using forecast tools. Typically, if you're a small business and you're looking at different agency forecasts, some of them are on spreadsheets. They're located in different places. You can find some on the website. So what we're trying to do is really work across the federal family so that our small businesses have one-stop shopping with respect to finding out what's happening in the federal landscape for forecasted opportunities in one place. And this was through GSA's forecast of contracting opportunities tool. But if we go to slide, the next slide, one of the things that I wanted to touch on today is the robust post-award engagement strategy. So this is item number 3 under GSA's Equity Action Plan. I encourage you to visit our website to find the Equity Action Plan. If you Google it, you do GSA's Equity Action Plan, it will come up and it's right there. And so one of the things that we're working on that I am responsible for establishing is creating a robust post-award engagement strategy. And so essentially we were to select a program manager, which is myself, and then set up an enterprise-wide team of every office in GSA. So have a representative from each of the offices across the enterprise. And then we're going to perform research on current activities, and then we're going to develop a plan. So what does all of that mean to you, and why is it important? Why am I sharing this with you? This post-award engagement strategy is going to help all of our contractors, once you receive a contract award, whether it's a GSA schedule or a GWAC, right? So when you're authorized to sell supplies and services through the federal government on a GSA pre-vetted vehicle, we're going to set up a program post-award to help you with your success. So for example, if you're in the schedules program, it's like a lot of businesses are saying, I have a schedule contract. So now what do I do? We're devising a plan to do things like revamp some of our trainings, make them more dynamic. A lot of feedback from the small business community has been that we offer these one-size-fits-all approach training. So we have, folks that are new to the federal government, some of those that have an intermediate understanding, and those that have an advanced understanding. And obviously, with those different levels of understanding, training has to be set up in that way so that people are more advanced, don't get stuck listening to things that maybe those that are new would need to hear. They've probably heard it several times, so they're looking for something different. So we're really looking into some of the things that we're currently doing and how we can scale some of those things up to really support our supplier community success post-award. So that is something that we are working on, and stay tuned for that. I'm very passionate about this project, and I'm really looking forward to providing more help to address barriers and support the success of all of our small businesses across the enterprise. Next slide, please. So I just wanted to leave behind a couple of things for you guys, because I talked about we host live and virtual events. And so we host an array of events in the Office of Small and Disadvantaged Business Utilization. We host monthly training. So some of the topics include how do you respond to an RFI and sources sought notice? I know we talked about that with the market research and set asides. Well, we have some of our COs in FAST that leads this course. We just did a Money Smart series in collaboration with SBA, where it was a 6-part series where all small businesses can understand how to manage cash flows, establish profitability, and then understand how to establish strong business credit to qualify for SBA's loan program. So today, our lead trainer out of the Washington District Office with SBA provided an overview of SBA's loan programs. And all of that training is free for you. And it's to help you to be successful, to navigate the procurement marketplace at the federal level. We also host matchmaking events. And so we host matchmaking events where we pair a prime contractor with a small business, and we match it based on the NAICS codes. And we try to set up a platform for purposeful discussions with the large businesses, but also networking opportunities for a lot of the small businesses. It's really important to network because, you know, oftentimes in the small business office, we encourage contractor teaming arrangements. And that happens between those that are scheduled providers and GSA contract holders. And so you really want to get to know your network, because if there's a large requirement, you could do a teaming arrangement to create a total solution for that. So it's always good to network, and these matchmaking events are great. Also, matchmaking provides another revenue stream for a lot of our small businesses. So we encourage you to check out our website. One thing that I did want to plug, and I just want to make sure I have the date correctly here. If you just give me 1 second. So one big thing that we're doing, I want you all to save the date. It's not in our slides, but I would love for you to check out our website. On July 26th and 27th, we're going to host our Small Business Works 2022 conference. And that is where we are going to have a full day virtual event. It's going to incorporate matchmaking, and that'll be different training segments for, like we talked about, those that are in the beginning and they're very new and they just need some help with understanding the federal procurement market, understanding the jargon, what's needed, our intermediate and our advanced. And that's how our trainings are going to be set up. So this is going to be a great conference. It's going to be over 2 days. The first day is with the small businesses. The second day will be with the acquisition workforce. So I encourage you to visit us at OSDBU, gsa.gov/OSDBU events. And I encourage you to follow us on our Small Business Interact community. We are constantly posting content, blog posts to help you set yourself up for success if you're attending a matchmaking event. We give helpful tips and information, anything that's related to events coming up with SBA. So there's an array of resources. So I encourage you to check out that website there. And if we can go to the next slide, I want to talk about something that we also created for the small business community, which are the OSDBU fact sheets. And so essentially we put together these one-pagers, and it's a one-pager front and back, and it provides information on things such as using the data in SAM to do market research and find contract opportunities. Because as a small business, it's really important to not only understand what's happening in the federal market, but to use data to help you make better decisions in terms of, strategic decisions to make, understanding what federal agencies and departments are purchasing your product and service, and so on and so forth. So we have that available, the fact sheets. We also have marketing to the federal government, helpful tips for that. We have a one-sheeter on walking you through responding to RFIs and source of sought notices and where to find that information. So I encourage you to check out this resource at gsa.gov/OSDBU fact sheets, because these were created with you in mind. And the last piece that I'd like to leave you with when we roll over to the next slide is information on our subcontracting directory. And with our subcontracting directory, what this does is it provides information with respect to those GSA prime contractors that have a prime contract, and they're obligated to have or provide for subcontracting opportunities for each of the socioeconomic categories. So I encourage you to check out our subcontracting directory if you're interested in subcontracting opportunities. And if we can go to the next slide. Oh, and that is the end of my presentation. And so at this point, I'll hand it back over to our lovely moderator for the day so that we can go into the next portion of the program.
All right. Thank you so much. Yeah, so we did have a couple questions come through the chat. I think it would be good to address those first. Sorry, can you actually see those questions in chat?
Yes.
Okay, I can leave it to you to see which one you would like to tackle first.
Yeah. So Ron Lanzo has a question. Ron, thank you for your question. Is SAM still the best way to find out when contracts are geared to small businesses? And so I have my colleague Michelle on the line with me. I'll answer this. And Michelle, if you could just chime in behind me to make sure we're giving a full response, that would be amazing. Are you there? I think you're on mute if you are.
I am.
Excellent. So with SAM, so if you're a GSA contract holder, so GSA has a policy where we are inclined to use our contract vehicles first. And then if we can't use our vehicles, then we go through the open market. So if you are a GSA contract holder, typically the federal agencies are going to post their requirements through our eBuy system. And so that's where you can find out all of the information there. But I would also look at sam.gov for some of those open market procurements, because you can meet with the federal agency and say if they're not open to using GSA, you could reference the support of our customer service directors that are located across the country, not necessarily to have the agency to, or for that CSD to push the agency to use you as a contractor, so to speak, but to give training to the CEO on how to source their requirements through the vehicle. So the CSD is there to promote the GSA vehicle, not your business. However, if you see an open market procurement and you have services that are available on the schedule and you'd like to see that go through your scheduled contract, then you can have the CSD to provide training to that 1102. And so I think utilizing both SAM and eBuy is the best way to do that. And then Michelle, did you want to add anything to that?
I do not. You covered it very well.
Perfect. And then I have Nick, and I don't want to say your last name incorrectly, but please comment on small disadvantaged business not being in the second bullet point. Not sure what
I believe
that
there's
is.
this slide.
Oh, because it would be an 8A sole source acquisition. So if you're in the 8A program, you are considered a small disadvantaged business. But for an SDB, that is just an SDB, and they are not, they don't have the 8A certification, then they would not be considered for this. So this is just for 8A specifically, because you can do a sole source 8A agreement. And Michelle, do you have anything to add to that?
No.
Okay. Let's go to the next question. Why are small business Canadian contractors required to submit a subcontracting plan when they have almost no opportunity to successfully subcontract with US small businesses? I'm not sure if I follow that there. Michelle, do you, I'm not sure.
It sounds like the subcontracting plan is required for large businesses. So why a small business Canadian contractors required to submit a subcontracting plan. So if you're a large business, you are required to under the policy, but if you're a small business, you're not required to submit a subcontracting plan. And Sarita, if you want to add to that.
No, I think you pretty much covered that pretty good there. And if we can go to the
we are at time right now. We need to give everybody enough time to move on to that 4 o'clock session, if you don't mind, Sarita, but we can address the rest of the questions offline. I have the chat saved. So it is actually time to close down. I do have, here are your 2 options. I'm putting them into chat right here. If you want to go to the MAS Solicitation Management Improvements Brainstorming Session, then stay right here. This is the breakout room for that. If you want to go to the packaged furniture maximum order threshold and contractor teaming arrangements discussion with Sean Kelly, then you want to follow that link. That will take you to the other breakout session. So you have 5 minutes there. And we can, again, I have your questions saved onto chat. Thank you for everybody who posted them. And we're happy to address those offline because we want to be respectful of everybody's time and make sure everybody can get to the next start of the breakout session. So with that said, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sarita. Thank you, Michelle, for your time and for your presentation today.
You're welcome.
My pleasure. Take care.
Thank you.
Hey, Matt, just checking audio and that you can see my slides.
Yes, I can see slides. I can hear you.
Awesome. Thank you, sir.
Same, Matt. You can hear me, right?
Yes, I can
Great.
hear you. I can't see you.
That's good.
Okay.
Hi, guys.
Hello.
All right. So we've got 3 minutes. We'll hold tight. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you.
Mhm. Hello, everybody. We'll be starting in less than a minute. Okay, it is 4 o'clock now. So hello, everyone, and welcome to the MAS Solicitation Management Improvements Brainstorming Session. I'm Matt Mastronardo. I work on the GSA Region 3 IWAC Business Development Team. I'll be moderating this second breakout session, and just some housekeeping items before we begin. You came in on mute with camera off, so please just remain on that during at least the presentation section. You can use the Zoom raise hand or reactions feature to raise your hand, and you can, for this breakout, ask questions at any time during the presentation. We'll call on you, and then you can come off of mute and on camera if you like to ask your question. We are aiming to have this session be as conversational as possible. You can also type your questions in the chat and I can answer them or I can ask them on your behalf. And we will also be asking a set of poll questions throughout this session. So this session runs until 4:30 Eastern. You are then free to go afterwards. We will not head back into the main room. So for this session, please join Jeff Calhoun and Steve Gervasi from the MAS Solicitation Management Office to discuss your concerns and share ideas for improving the multiple award schedule or MAS solicitation. Jeff and Steve, it's all yours.
All right, thanks, Matt. So I'm hoping this session goes well. We were kind of playing around with how this goes. I think, so for anyone that doesn't know, my name's Jeff Calhoun. I'm a contracting officer for the Mass Solicitation, work in the Solicitation Management Office. Steve Gervasi is also on with us, and Dana Anello is our third team member who is out of the office at the moment because she's getting married. So congratulations to Dana. So for this session, I mean, I think, listen, like we get bogged down, like I think so many others, in sort of putting out fires, being reactive. I think really we're trying to be more proactive to really identify areas of the solicitation we can improve, identify them based on, stakeholder perspective. And I know a lot of you provided responses to the survey that Jim Boyle sent out. So what this session seeks to do, so there were 6 survey questions that were sent out, and they focused on compliance, ease of use, and just general feedback. And what we want to do is go through each of the questions, some of the feedback we received, give a couple of minutes, hopefully, for some dialogue, some perspective from you all, and then sort of a vote in the poll for which of the topics, which of the answers we feel like are most important. And again, I think we're looking to take some of this data back. And actually, although we're just doing this particular survey with the Furniture QPC, our team is looking to potentially roll something like this, something similar to this out to the entire program, and hopefully something we can do on a regular basis to really engage with our stakeholders and figure out, hey, where can we really improve? So let's get into it. So I think we're good. I've got kind of a clock here, Matt. I don't know if you're tracking it as well, but I'll try to keep track as well. So our first question here is, in terms of compliance, from a policy regulation compliance perspective, what areas can be improved? Clarifying, these are the responses we received. So we've got 7, and we're going to be launching a poll where we're hoping you will pick what you feel is most important. So clarity on BAA versus TAA, the idea of eliminating the 20-year period of performance cap, a more thorough explanation of when the changes that we implement in a solicitation refresh, price reduction clause training, more consistent PCO interpretation and application of processes policy, streamlining the EPA process, and improved communication of SAM information, meaning that information you provide in SAM, improved communication of that information out to your customers and other stakeholders. So a couple minutes here, opening up. If you raise your hand, I'd like to come off mute and provide some perspective. Looks like Matt did launch the poll, so you could vote now. Again, hope to have a little bit of dialogue before you make your selection. So we'll give a couple minutes if anybody has perspective on any of these.
Sorry, Jeff, I'll release the next poll when
Oh, that's
you
fine.
actually tell me.
Yeah, that's fine. All right, do we have any hands, Matt?
No hands that I'm seeing.
Okay. I don't want to lobby for mine because I feel like that would be unfair.
but people are answering the polls.
Okay. Yeah, I think I'll just say based on responses, I think I was encouraged to see that some of these responses were things that we've felt like were areas of improvement that we've been thinking about or at least focusing on. So not a lot of surprises in this list, but I'm trying to think if there was any that sort of caught us off guard. I'm looking at keeping a clock. I'm like 2 minutes on this one, so I guess a couple more.
We have one raised hand from Patrick
Okay.
Carr. Patrick,
Go for
please
it.
feel free to come off mute.
Are they able? Do we have to release them from you, Matt?
No, Pat, you should be able to come off mute.
No.
We also have about half of everybody here answered answered the poll so far. If you haven't answered the poll yet, please feel free to do so. Jeff, do you want me to just leave it open for another minute, or?
Yeah, that makes
Okay.
sense. If we can't figure out the mute thing, huh? Or if okay, yeah. So there we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Awesome. No, I just, these are all very valid. Tough to choose. I mean, BAA and TAA is often misunderstood. That it's not written in plain language for people to understand. That's an area that needs to be, dealt with because nobody understands it. I've talked to many people, and I've gotten within the GSA and outside of the GSA and contractors, nobody understands. There's got to be 30 or 40 different interpretations. But I would focus on number 6 right now because this is the urgent need. This is survival for many contractors at the moment. And we can't wait for policy changes that aren't definitive. This is impacting many manufacturers, and there doesn't seem to be any clear policy on it and guidance to the COs. And I've talked to COs, and they're saying, "Well, this is very this doesn't help me because I don't know what I need to do." And it says you can, but it doesn't say they should. So it kind of leaves the COs hanging out there saying, am I going to get in trouble for giving it 25% EPA? It's up to them. They're kind of out there, and there's no clear guidance to them, and there's no clear guidance to the contractor on what we need to provide. It's like whatever, it's kind of a whatever ruling.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really release anybody from anything, even though you provide whatever you can provide. It's so ambiguous, it really doesn't accomplish anything. The acquisition memo that came out doesn't really do anything. It's nice, it's rhetoric, it's nice to say, but it really doesn't accomplish anything. So are there any plans to help COs and contractors navigate, this urgent crisis?
Yeah. I mean, and I'll take it back. I think the new EPA process is fresh out of the box, so to speak, right? The letter, and I think in terms of application, the jury's still out, so to speak. And I think certainly we're trying to monitor and look for opportunities to. I think to your point, I think was partially your point is. there's PCO training, communication, leveraging the information. You know, are we being consistent in terms of this new latitude that's now available? So appreciate the comments. I think the poll's closed, so we want to try to make sure we have time for each of these slides. To your comments, I think the streamline EPA was a close second, but clarity on BAA and TAA is at the top. And thankfully, I'm actually glad to see that at the top, because Steve and I, this is something we're actually working on now, and hopefully we'll at least have a proposed solution on an upcoming refresh. So stay tuned on that. So appreciate the responses. Yeah, thanks. So we will go on to the next one. I'll restart my clock, Matt, try to keep us on point. From a customer perspective, what areas could be improved? Number one, improved tools to solicit orders, eBay Advantage, eliminating duplicative SINs, size certifications at the SIN NAICS level rather than at the contract level. We had a suggestion for a new SIN that would cover engineering and architecture services under schedules, complying with the Brooks Act, reducing the timeline for adding products, I guess, or services, so adding items to schedules. Again, improve communication regarding our solicitation changes, improving GSA responsiveness, and more assistance for customers to develop statements of work. So again, we'll give a couple minutes if anyone has comments they'd like to share. And then I guess we'll hold off on the poll, Matt, until maybe we get some comments.
You got it.
Or if anyone wants to chat comments, we can bring those in as well. I will say interesting. Interesting. We have a specific request for a SIN. I don't know. I think typically, you know, we do get those requests are usually originate with our stakeholders, right? That we, you know, in our office in Philadelphia, probably typically aren't thinking up new SINs, right, in a vacuum. But yeah, I mean, I encourage. I love seeing that kind of stuff. Like, you know, if you all are out there with customers and say, you know, what would really help the program, or what would really help, you know, be selfish about it, right? What would really help me serve my customers would be a SIN that looks something like this, or, you know, an adjustment to a SIN. So encourage that kind of feedback. I love it.
No raised hands or comments in the chat. So
right.
if you like, I'll launch the poll. Let's keep it 1 minute tops to respond. All right, everybody, here we go.
I'm not going to vote, by the way, Matt. In case you're wondering, I just looked to see if it would let me though, which I don't think it's supposed to. Like we found a glitch, Steve. We can stack the results.
The results are coming in.
Right.
All right, 30 more seconds.
And I'll just continue. Like I think, yeah, I really appreciate the feedback, and you know, want to reassure you all that, you know, we're looking, Steve and Dana and I, you know, we're really looking for. There's so many ideas and so many things that we could, you know, potentially work on. So I think the tough work is what's most responsive to what our stakeholders are saying is important. So I think, you know, I guess what I'm saying is that, you know, this is great feedback and I appreciate it. And, you know, we're going to really try to leverage it to our advantage, except when we have a tie. I don't know what we do now. So no, interesting. Nothing for duplicative SINs. Some people like the idea of the new SIN. GSA responsiveness, and I know, hey, you know, that's certainly an issue across the program, or can be an inconsistent issue. But yeah, so improving our tools to solicit orders, and I think we do have some efforts that are really, you know, it's actually interesting. I think, yeah, reduced timeline for adding products. I don't know. I mean, I think that we could dig into that more. I think I don't know that we currently have any efforts or initiatives that are specifically targeting that. So it's a good one. It's one to take back. Again, I would say the first one, improving tools to solicit orders. We do have some the Mass PMO rather does have some initiatives that are targeting that. So thank you for those responses. All right, I guess we'll move on to the next one, Matt.
Yep.
All right, this is a long one here. So there's a lot of information given from a vendor perspective, which makes sense, right? That's what you all would have the most familiarity with. What can be improved? So I think the first one gets to more specific information for areas where our COs are being variable in terms of their interpretation or application of the process. More consideration to vendors' commercial practices, flexibility. I think this is getting to dictating terms, right? Order status, those sorts of things, rather than simply leveraging the commercial practices of the vendor. Line in, line out functionality for solicitation changes. So again, more clearly showing what's changed and how. Automatic approval of deletion and administration mods, eliminating the PRC, clarifying and improving consistency of SIN scope reviews. So that process by which GSA is determining whether or not your proposal is within scope of a particular SIN or meets the minimum requirements of that SIN. Eliminating the varying portals for admin award and ordering. Simplifying the RFQ process to make it more uniform, and clarifying packaged office conversion process to CTA, the new CTA approach. Okay, so a couple minutes if anyone has perspective or questions or comments. All right.
Oh, raised hand, Patrick. You can come off mute.
Oh, I think that mute button's sticking.
Yeah. Okay.
There's such a wild variance in between 1 and 2. I mean, every PCO, I mean, and the variance is huge, huge. It's not even small. I mean, between buying centers or, different regions, there's got to be, to have a fair playing field for contractors, there's got to be some consistency, and especially in the vendors' commercial sales practices. This is what, if you're a non-TDR contract, this is what is supposed to be used. And it's not being, especially since they put this 4P program. So if you are a CSP contractor, you're stuck between a combination of TDR and commercial sales practices. You got to be one or the other. Can't be both. I mean, I understand fair and reasonable. There's no definition for it. It's up to every contracting officer, PCO, CO. There's got to be some kind of set rules, some kind of set standard. 4P is not working at the moment. And this is, in my opinion, the two biggest issues right now in maintaining contracts and modifying contracts and getting contracts awarded. So just a statement for me. Everything else, yeah, you need to be addressed, but those two are the most important.
All right, thank you, sir. Appreciate it. I think we're about ready for the poll, Matt.
All right. This will be open for 1 minute.
It's a long list, I know.
And then we, just for a time check, we have about 10 minutes left. I think we have 2 more polls remaining.
Okay.
So
we're kind of on track.
we're on track.
Right. Yeah, I'll tell you, I mean, I think, and I'm not lobbying for one, I just, I mean, it's always been, to me, the idea of the balance, right? The idea that a PCO by their authority needs to be independent, needs to, have that independent thinking, be able to assess, such, wildly different circumstances and make a decision that's in the best interest of the government. And to me, it's kind of the beauty of being a contracting officer and, one of the great things about it. But on the flip side of that, is there consistent understanding of the parameters within which they need to be operating? I think that's kind of the balance that you try to strike. And I think with the consolidation happening, I can certainly see in the program at least the framework for a more consistent approach, right? I think we've have behind the scenes, I'll tell you, for the first time, that I'm aware of ever, for the last, Steve, I guess since consolidation, we've had this, a regular weekly meeting of representatives from every mass center in the country. And we're talking about topics and, we're trying to get on the same page, right? We're trying to get a consistent approach to all these mass processes. So progress is slow. I mean, I'm hearing that, and I'm not surprised that, to some extent we're not seeing it as much as we'd like to, but I personally am encouraged that at least we have the framework now, and I can see like a really collaborative spirit in that team and centers that, really want to get consistent with the program. So hopefully that, in time is going to really pay dividends. So number one was vendors' commercial practices and flexibility. And yeah, I think it's an important point. I think it's a really complex point. And I think, again, balancing act of things where, to some extent, terms have been dictated in the schedule and some particular items within the schedule that are contrary to some commercial practices for some vendors. So I understand why you all consider that to be important, and we'll certainly take that back. A lot of this too, I will say, I mean, I think we're talking about how we can change the solicitation. I think a lot of this is, what can we, how can we present this to the mass PMO in terms of the mass program and focus areas and, what the sort of the vision of the program and where we should be focused and where maybe we shouldn't be as focused or as giving us such a priority to certain things. So anyway, I guess what I'm saying is we'll take a lot of this information back as well to the mass PMO and say, hey, I think this really just speaks to maybe some focus of the program and in conjunction with solicitation changes. So now that I've killed our schedule, Matt, I'll quickly get us into the next one. Okay, from a workforce standpoint, what could be improved? More detailed explanation of fair and reasonable price, more detailed explanation of responsibility determinations, prohibiting working offline to influence cycle times, more robust rejection requirements, and more detailed explanation of EPAs based on market indicator. We'll give some time for any input you all may have.
Jeff, did you want GSA folks to be answering this specific poll since it's the workforce? Or?
We sent out to QPC, I think, only. But...
Oh, okay, I gotcha. All right, so Patrick.
Yeah, sorry, I know I'm a repeat offender here. Number one is such a complicated issue that I don't think any short time fix for that. Okay, because nobody, I've asked for years what it is and never got a really answer. It's like whatever the CO wants it to be. So I would take that off the table. Number three, the offline influence on cycle times. That is the most immediate and the most easily fixed, in my opinion. We're subverting the system here. And there's a clock in the system that I know COs are evaluated on, but it dramatically influences getting anything done in any short time. There's offline work that's being done for months, and it's not visible to the GSA leadership. It's basically a workaround for CEOs not to be criticized or evaluated on cycle times. So that would be my vote, is to prohibit that. And there's so much variable. They don't get things in the email, they lose things in the emails, and just creates repetitive work. So I know we're on a timeline, so I'll leave it at that.
Yep, no, appreciate it.
Thanks, Patrick.
Yeah. It's where a metric drives behavior.
I can launch the poll.
Yep.
All right, 1 minute.
Yeah, and Steve knows, I mean, this is something, or that is something in particular, the cycle time discussion that has been, I know the PMO is aware and has been working some on that. So.
Okay, got about 30 seconds left and about 4 minutes left. Okay, results should be shared.
Okay, oh, we have a second tie here, but yeah, the rejection requirements is an interesting one. I can tell you the program in particular, our internal review OGP activity is taking a look at that. So I can tell you there is work, significant work in the program to address rejections both in offers and mods. And market indicator EPAs, yeah, I think that's always been maybe a lesser known, lesser understood, and potentially less leveraged method of applying EPA. So yeah, appreciate that. And certainly solicitation changes we could make under both of those, really, I think, to potentially could come out of this feedback. So appreciate it. All right, so we got 3 minutes, Matt. We'll try to get through the last one here. So
Yep.
Redundant areas of the solicitation, corporate experience beyond years of experience, labor category descriptions, EPA, etc. Stuff that's already in the PPT, but you disclose it in other areas of your offer or mod. I think this one really maybe not so much redundant or conflicting maybe, but PO portal shipping info requirement versus the standard commercial practice of a vendor. EMOD system required responses versus info that's already provided but maybe embedded in the attachments. Changing a POC in your system, so individual